My TikTok on this absolutely blew up a few months ago, and even though it's not something I specialize in, astrocartography is a really fun technique to practice. So this is an overview of what astrocartography is, how to use it, and some cool things I recommend that you do with it. So if you're excited to dive into all things astrocartography, make sure that you like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so that you are always up to date with what the stars have in store for you. Hi, I'm Maren. I am a professional astrologer, author, and student. I combine ancient Hellenistic astrological techniques with modern counseling dynamics to provide grounded guidance. This video is brought to you by my very own Rise Into Yourself course. So this course is a starter course, one for each of the 12 rising signs, so that by learning about your rising sign, you learn about the map to your life and therefore a key to working with the destiny laid out in front of you. This course walks you through each sign and house combination for you and your particular rising sign to really lead you through unlocking a map to stepping into who you are. So if you're looking to rise into your life, you can check out that course down below at my website. So first off, the astrologer Jim Lewis trademarked astrocartography. He's really the one who defined it and popularized it and has it spelled out with asterisks in a particular way. He even got a Regulus Award in 1992 for his contributions to the astrological community. And he has a lot of other really intricate techniques like cyclocartography and very applications of this out the wazoo. And an astrologer that I am known of for several years who does content on this is Moses Sirigar. I heard him first a few years ago on the Astrology podcast, I believe, which is where my first introduction to astrocartography seriously was. I mean, I had seen it and knew about it growing up, but that was where I really nailed down and was I can start using this with clients. So I do recommend that if you're new or you want just a discussion about the history to astrocartography, that the Astrology podcast has an episode from a few years ago backlog. And it's a really visceral experience because you can feel planetary energy amplified in certain locations on Earth. In this technique, we're looking at that by superimposing the planetary movement at your time of birth based on the angles of your chart onto a map of the world. And it takes into account if they're rising or setting, but it's where are the planets at your birth superimposed onto the Earth. And I get asked a lot about the range you can use for seeing a line and how far you are. It's not just like orbs in aspects. It's not like a cut and dry thing, it'll vary, but within 100 miles is probably pretty intense, and within 500 miles is probably, not as intense. So that can be taken into account as well, depending on if you have a choice between living right on a line or living a little bit off. That can be something to take into account. And normal astrological principles apply. If you know basic astrology, signs, houses, aspect, planets, it's that taken into account on a map. And this makes sense. We have certain relationships with certain places. But the baseline, as always for this, will be understanding your root natal chart, or whatever chart you're using. That's the context for what these symbolic planetary lines will really mean. And if you have not seen my intro videos to the planets, signs, and houses, you can check out all those videos down below to get a good understanding of how to start, interpreting all the symbolic things in your chart. To pull up astrocartography, you can use websites like astro.com or astro-c. I'll include links below. You can also just Google it. I use Astro Gold software. It's still waiting on a sponsorship. If anyone wants to get back to me, that would be cute because I get asked 100 times a day and I could be making bank on them. Yeah. I digress. But if you pull it up on a calculator, you're probably going to see every line under the sun, or not under the sun, under the earth, I guess. But for me, I like to keep it really simple, as always. I don't even use aspect lines on my charts. I only really look at the major planetary lines of rising and setting. Every location is technically going to have some line through it, but as always, parsimony, simplicity, I'm going to look at rising, setting, major lines, and that's it. I'm not even going to look at the angle lines as AC, I'm just going to look at the planets. Yeah, that's about it. So let's get into the basic understanding of the planetary lines. Let's talk about the benefics. So Venus and Jupiter are the two planets that indicate optimism, positivity, growth. So if you were born at night, meaning that your sun is below the horizon, check to see if on your ascendant-descendant axis, your sun is below the axis. It's not AM or PM. It's if you were born when the sun was dark, your sun will be below the ascendant-descendant axis. That means that Venus is your more powerful benefic. It is your benefic, your good planet of sect of your chart. So Venus lines for nighttime charts will be this easy, good feeling of really being attractive there, of being attracted to being there. Venus lines for people born at night are cute shit. On the other hand, if you were born during the day, so your sun is above your ascendant-descendant axis and it was light out, Jupiter is your benefic of sect. So look to Jupiter lines for I mean pretty standardly like the best, most optimistic, most welcoming places to live. This obviously will depend on the dignity and the placement of Jupiter or Venus in your chart. For example, a maltreated Venus in the 12th house, you know, opposite Neptune, Uranus, Pluto, fucking everything is gonna be like, maybe you don't wanna be there, but all things aside, Jupiter and Venus lines, cute. For example, my Jupiter line, my benefic line, runs straight through Brazil and the Middle East. I've never been to those places, but I have a really good Jupiter line, so maybe I will one day when the world is safe. Now for the malefics, the planets that say no or challenge things. If you were born at night, so sun below the horizon, Saturn is the most challenging planet in your chart because it is the malefic contrary to sect. It is the bad guy on the other team. So Saturn lines for people born at night will probably be the most difficult, challenging, limiting places on Earth. Whereas if you were born during the day and your sun is above the horizon, Mars lines are more challenging because Mars is the malefic contrary to sect for you. It's the bad guy on the other team. Especially if you have, you know, a maltreated or really debilitated Mars or Saturn. If you have like a really strong Mars or Saturn like in its own sign, you know, getting bona fide, then maybe it's like you take on the challenge but you end up doing really well. But all things considered, like for me, my Mars is really complicated and fucked up. I don't want to live on a Mars line. Like even though my Mars line is by a bunch of other things because I have a bunch of oppositions in my chart, you can see it, yeah, there, running straight through. Now, the sun and the moon lines have this experience of coming home. Sun being recognized, moon for feeling safe, basic sun-moon kind of differences in intelligence or emotional security, things like that. But overall, very, very, you know, coming home, welcoming lines, especially sun lines for day births or day charts, night or moon lines for night charts, night births. For example, my sun line runs straight through Hawaii, and because my sun and north node are exactly conjunct, they'll always be on top of one another. North node lines indicate massive increase and south node lines indicate massive decrease. So like north node lines can be pretty manic and south node lines can be pretty fatigued. They're not going to be the same quality as planets where it's like specific events, but I know that sun north node lines, or like north node lines can be like scarily ambitious or obsessive and just a lot, and south node lines can be really tiring or draining. But basically, sun going through Hawaii would probably be lovely. I've never been, but yeah, it would be lovely. Mercury lines are great for informative things, travel, communicating, even selling. Like great for travel, especially with Mercury. And you can learn a lot in those places. I have a Mercury line running through Bangladesh, and it's right next to my Venus line since they're conjunct. I've never visited, but it would probably be nice for me to go and learn some things. Uranus lines are crazy, spontaneous, very stimulated. Huge electric energy. Great for learning, very, very hypercharged, overstimulating. If you're very Uranian, like I have all my personal planets basically opposite Uranus, you might be able to handle it or enjoy it more. I know I've liked some of my Uranus line places, but I couldn't see myself living there. My Uranus line is right through the Bahamas and Cuba, and I remember like loving the Bahamas when I went there when I was 12 to the Atlantis resort, and it was definitely a very like wired kind of energy. I remember I wanted to party at the teen clubs, but you had to be 13 and I was 12. I haven't visited many of my Uranus lines, so I just know that I really love the Bahamas and was very, very stimulated and like, ooh, ah. I was 12 though, so. Neptune lines are very hazy, dreamy, glamorous energy. Someone just bought the Astrology Academy. Shameless plug, guys. You should look down below. Sorry, I love seeing that people are joining us. Okay, back to Neptune lines. Neptune can be deceptive or intoxicated, so be careful about clarity or around like over partying on these lines. My Neptune line is right through Central America. I have not visited these places, even though I noticed a Mars line straight through Belize, and I did visit there as a kid and had a pretty difficult experience just because I'm difficult. But you know, beautiful for a resort or a getaway, so maybe I'll want to visit down there somewhere when I want to get away. Pluto lines, psychological shit show sums it up. Very intense horror film energy. I think Pluto as a planet more than the other planets can describe really difficult locations just in terms of like the transformative energy, where even if you get a lot of really beautiful rebirth and like psychological like death and decay and then rebirth, it's fucking difficult. I say that as someone who identifies more with Pluto energy than a lot of other planets, just personally, like, it's a fucking difficult line. I would not want to live there. It can be really paranoid. It could be great for, you know, like I said, like a psychological death and rebirth. And the phrase I used to describe it as well as funhouse. Like, you think everything is lying to you and everything is very deceptive, like very, very black and white grayscale, and you're like in a crime film kind of vibe. I have a Pluto line straight through Argentina pretty much, like right through where my, like, we actually have a place like in Bariloche, Argentina, and I cannot describe how intense, like, it's this beautiful fucking, like, it's this beautiful house on like a resort on a lake in like just an objectively beautiful, otherworldly, dreamy kind of place. I mean, you can look up Patagonia or Bariloche, like in Argentina. It's beautiful, and I feel like absolute death there. Like, it is very difficult for me to go, not just because of plane phobia. I mean, Buenos Aires as well was like, I thought I was in a funhouse film. It was just, it was otherworldly. I felt like I was gonna puke everywhere, and there's a good chance, actually I probably am going end of January, beginning of February, to like get away. It's my dad like trying to escape COVID lockdowns. It's like, come with me to Argentina, and I'm like, Argentina's the #1 like case at this point, and he's like, but we're gonna be in the mountains, it's not BA. So I'm like, okay, yeah, that's true, I need to get away. Yeah, so Pluto lines I do not recommend more than any other lines, but if you're like me and you're just like, fuck it, might as well die and be reborn on a beautiful Patagonian mountain, then maybe try it. And Chiron is not a planet, but a lot of people ask about Chiron lines. Chiron, of course, is known as the wounded healer. Represents vulnerability or openness around insecurity, and really like teaching best what we most need to learn. So like, I have Chiron on my midheaven, so I teach about things I'm not yet mastered, even though people think I have in some ways, which is funny because I'm like, bitch, I'm still learning, but people learn like that for me. It's about not having all the answers, about receiving healing for wounds, and my Chiron line, as you can see, runs right through Honduras. Not somewhere I've been, but it would be great for healing or being very vulnerable, probably. So let me know if you know where certain lines overlay in your chart, and if you've had experiences there or feel very called to go there. I know that I have my Jupiter line as well, like through Russia, near Moscow, and I've always been like, you would love Russia. Not in a, like, political safety sense necessarily, because there's, you know, some questions, but in a way of like the culture and whatnot, I've always been fascinated. And for some more advanced considerations, let's say you want to move somewhere to find a marriage partner, you would look to the line of the planet that rules your whole sign 7th house. So like, the moon rules my 7th house. I would look to where's my moon line if I wanted to maybe meet a marriage partner. And if you want to make money, look to the lines of your 2nd house or 8th house ruling planet. So look to the sign on a particular house to find the location of where you could run into those house topics in the world. And if you want to go somewhere for like fame or visibility, look to the line of angular planets in your chart. So planets on your MC especially, but even on any angle, like your ascendant, descendant, MC, IC, if a planet is angular, it is very focal. So like, you might be focal if you go to that place, which makes me want to visit my Neptune line, which is on my ascendant, or Chiron, which is on my MC. Yeah, Saturn's on my IC. I could go to fucking, but I'm prominent and you know. And similarly, if a planet is like in your 12th house, opposed by Saturn, conjunct Uranus, like, you might not want to visit that planet's line. It's probably different than if you're visiting like Venus exalted in the 5th house, trine Jupiter, like that's gonna be like fucking an amazing line. So use your judgment based on the context of your chart to know it's preferable. Like Mars in my chart rules my midheaven, my angle of public appearance, but it's in the 8th house, opposite Uranus and Neptune, squared by Saturn. Like Mars lines would not be great given how complicated my Mars is, and Mars runs straight through DC, which makes me be like, if I do ever go into politics and live in DC, it's gonna be a rough ride. But yeah, my Jupiter is in Pisces, that's dignified. It is not maltreated. So my Jupiter lines would be pretty great if I'm ever able to visit those places, because they are either just like kind of out of the normal trip that I would consider, or just in places that are uninhabitable. So yeah, so use your chart context and your knowledge of planets to discern where and why you want to visit places. So if you enjoyed this and you want to check out our Modern Magic membership community down below, we would love to have you join. We have several hundred of us and are quickly growing to get early access to content, special lives with me, constantly upgrading and adding new content and perks for the members. So check that out down below, along with the Rise Into Yourself course if you are interested. Otherwise, make sure you like, subscribe, and let me know if you have any thoughts about astrocartography or want specific other videos around this. I would love to hear you. So yeah, take care, and I will see you in the next one.